Hello and welcome to Beach View, our podcast about different things and/or stuff.
Hello. Today we have a special guest with us, Travis. Would you like to introduce yourself? Well, I guess I just
Hi, I'm
did.
Travis. I've been here before.
Would you also like to introduce the album we're doing, because you picked it?
It's an album by St. Paul and the Broken Bones called Young Sick Camellia. Chose the album because it's a little bit different than the norm, and honestly, I didn't hear the full thing until we did this review, so I was interested in hearing the full album. I've only heard a few songs up to this date, so.
Alright, yeah. So, general thoughts about it?
Travis, you go first.
Sure. It has a lot more melancholy vibe than I was expecting, but it's generally, soul-based style. The band's out of Birmingham, Alabama, so it has that kind of southern feel to it. But I thought it was good. It just wasn't what I expected.
Okay.
What were you expecting?
I was expecting a little bit more upbeat, based off of some of their older albums that I had listened to. And this was definitely a little bit slower and a little bit, like I said, more melancholy.
Yeah, definitely.
I'll go next. So, I agree with that assessment. It was definitely different than what I normally listen to, and it had this kind of soulful, almost bluesy kind of feel to it. Some songs had a definite kind of 70s, 80s vibe. Yeah, and I thought a lot of the songs had a good beat. I really like the horn section. I think growing up in the South, that brass band feel kind of came through. So I like that part of it. And some of the songs were slower and a little sad, but for the most part, I thought it was an interesting listen. I'll say that.
Yeah, and I agree with those sentiments that, not my usual thing. It's a different sound for me. And I generally liked it. And, I agree that, it's very soulful. But I will say, I felt like this had some jazz fusion influence.
Yeah.
I mean, am I making that up, or?
No, not at
I
all.
got that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's kind of why I went this direction because some of their older albums I really like, and a couple of their more upbeat songs in this album, that I had heard were really good to me. So I'm really into the funk jazz kind of, vibe, fusion vibe, just because I think it's a very interesting style of music. You can go in so many different directions. You can go more R&B, you can go more rock, you can do so much with it. And it's just, and I feel like they really capture that pretty well. As musicians, I think these guys are incredible. So as far as the musical performance, I thought the whole album was, expertly composed, but it just wasn't, exactly what I had in mind. So.
Yeah. Could see that. The whole time I was listening, I kept feeling like this is one of those bands that I could see, watching perform live at Jazz Fest or even at a wedding down here, you know what I mean? It was one of those sounds that you feel like would fit right into this I guess environment, the musical
Yeah.
talent of New Orleans. So it sounded familiar, but totally with a different twist, I guess you would say,
Yep.
Yeah. And one final note from me is that this has a lot of instruments on it, which I think is cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything else, or you want to get into the track by track?
I guess let's hop right in.
All right.
All right. Number 1 is Cumulus Part 1. So this is a short, I think it's 32-second intro, and it has this kind of country sounding voice at the end of it, coming right at the end. So just a little intro piece.
Yeah, and there's several of these short instrumentals with a spoken bit to them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I've never been huge on the skits in albums and things like that, but I do feel like these they do kind of set a tone for this album for some reason. and the musical support in them is pretty interesting. It's kind of like a deconstructed, ominous vibe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah.
In each one of them. So I think that being congruent throughout the album is pretty neat. But as we go on and the skits get longer or shorter, with the amount of dialogue in it, it just some of them I can't really quite tell what the direction they're going for, but it still works.
Yeah, I'll give you that.
Yeah, I like all of these.
Yeah,
So,
Yeah. Yeah, they didn't bother
and I
me.
like this one. It's a neat little intro.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I think it was a good way to start the album for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, I'll say that.
So, next.
All right, number 2, Convex. So this one you have the horns right up front. This one sounds very bluesy or like very soulful, and this was one that reminded me of like 70s, 80s. It's got a long outro. The song itself is longer than 5 minutes, but it has like a lot of that instrumentation that you're talking about.
Yeah, I particularly love this groove. It like starting off like you said with the horn section, it kind of playing this like staccato muted kind of sound where it's just really short notes, and I think it sets up the track really well. I think it's just a really solid song. And I think it was a great opener for the album, which when I first listened to it, it's kind of, a little bit more on the upbeat side. So I was thinking that the whole album was going to kind of proceed the same way. And
Yeah.
it's like,
Yeah.
and as we go through, it changes a little bit here and there, but yeah, I think it does set a good tone for the album, and it rolls straight out from that intro pretty well. So
Yeah, I agree that the horns, I think really shine here, and yeah, it's a good song. I think I like the verses in particular.
Yeah, I agree. I think you hit it right on the head, Travis, when you said it was a groove. Like, that's what it makes me think of. Like, that's why I said, like, 70s, 80s, like, groove music, Like,
oh
I
yeah,
could just picture, like, being at like, people dressed in, like, the 70s outfits, like, at a skating rink, like,
yeah, yeah,
jam
yeah,
into this
definitely.
groove. Yeah. Yeah, it's a good one. All right, we'll move on to number 3. Got It Bad. So this one's got some interesting lyrics. He says, we are just bruised fruit falling from the tree. God is a gambler who can't set us free. And this one definitely gives me more of a Boogie Nights kind of vibe. So definitely that
Yes,
like 70s feel again.
yes. This is one of the
Yeah,
ones I had heard previously, and it's got that strong funk and disco kind of feel to it,
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
definitely.
which I think is really awesome considering we're so far removed from that era, and you have all these modern or young musicians kind of reverting back to some of that funk, and it's very commonplace now to kind of go back into that funk realm and pull some influences from something that we really had nothing to do with. I mean, we're kind of so far removed from that genre.
Yeah.
So it's interesting, and I think that the vocals in this song mate really well with the track. He's got really strong, powerful vocals, and I think it really shines.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of this. It sounds a bit too old school for me.
Yeah, definitely old
Yeah,
school for sure.
But yeah, it's not a bad song. Just I don't like the more old school tracks on here, which are quite a bit aren't like
Yeah.
my absolute favorite often.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
yeah,
I gotcha. I can see that. Yeah. It's fun. It's a fun little beat.
yeah.
all right, well next.
All right. Well, we're wrapping up that Boogie Nights feel. We'll get into number 4, which is NASA. This gave me like a Prince vibe. It's like a slower song, definitely more soul than the other two. What did you guys think?
Um, I agree. Actually, my notes were slow and soulful.
Oh, there you
Um,
go.
but
Yep, same.
yeah, I do like the breakdown, like when they're moving into like from the beginning they kind of do this little breakdown and transition. And I think it's pretty seamless. It wasn't one of my favorite songs, but it wasn't offensive. It wasn't like, I mean, it's just kind of like background music to me almost, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't think it was a bad song. I definitely just kept picturing like Prince singing. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, decent song. I'd say it's a bit too slow for my taste, but like, I don't
Mm-hmm.
dislike it. So
Yeah.
There's a positive review. All right. Number 5, Mature Part 2. So this is another one. It's got this southern accent. It's speaking about like Georgia, Alabama. It sounded like they were talking about like a hurricane or a tornado. He said all that was left of this big church was the staff. This is like a short interlude, one of those kind of skits again. But I really like the flute sound at the beginning. I'm guessing, was that a flute?
Yes. Yeah. It was.
Okay, I guess what it sounded like to me.
Yeah. I agree. I like the musical composition of this because it's almost like a deconstructed melody, and then it kind of goes into like your flute
Yeah.
at toward the end, and I think it's really well done because it does give that kind of creepy, ominous, like we
Yes.
just went through something kind of thing,
Yeah.
yeah, I like the dissonance.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it was a little creepy. It is a little depressing, like talking about like a storm and with like nothing left, just because we've seen it so many times before. So I was kind of like,
Well, that
I don't
gives
like
it.
the vibe.
Yeah, well, it gives it relatability too, because the band's from the South, the
It
voices from the
does.
South.
It
So
does. It gives it
yeah,
relatability for sure. But just but it was fine. I mean, not that I didn't like it. I was like, it was kind of sad. So,
yeah,
all right. Next, moving on. Next, we have number 6 is Apollo. This to me was like more like a James Brown sounding intro at the beginning. And I like the sound. It had a good beat. It had nice horns. There's that flute again. And I think, it's definitely a song you could dance to. It was a little bit more, I think, upbeat. So I liked it.
yeah. This is actually my favorite song on the album, and is probably the one I was most familiar with. I think it has excellent horn support, and I think it's got a really, really good bassline groove. It's most certainly one you could kind of dance to, or it kind of gives me that like feel good Friday vibe, you know.
Yeah, there
Um,
you go.
the vocals in this one, I find that they're muted in a way to where they're not like the shining characteristic in the song, but they're still such a unique sound. And when I first heard the song, like instantly I liked it right away, just from the opening, the way the vocals sounded. It was just captivating to me. And every time I hear it, I mean, I've heard the song plenty of times, and every time I hear it, I never want to change it. It's always one that I listen through to the end.
Okay.
Wait, you skip songs in the middle?
Sometimes.
Yes, all the time.
Ah, nah, that's sacrilegious to me. If you commit to listening to the song, you're committed all the way through.
Well, I mean, honestly, very rarely do I listen to a full album. And many a time when I'm listening to songs anyway, it's like through the workday. And if something's just not hitting right, I just change the song, So it's feel dependent. But this is one that I keep playing, every time it pops up, I'll just keep going with it. I don't get tired. So
Yeah. So I'm gonna be a contrarian here and say I didn't really like this one.
Oh.
I I don't know. I don't know what it is about it. Maybe it sounded too much like a throwback to me.
yeah,
Yes.
yep.
Definite throwback feel, for sure.
Yeah. I don't know. Didn't really like it.
All right. Well, number 7, Mr. Invisible. This is another slower song. It's a little sad, but it had a good sound. Like, basically, I think the premise of the song, he's saying that happiness is gone. So it's a little melancholy.
Yeah, so I like the vibe of the song a lot. And in fact, I think it actually goes really well with that last skit, the mature part 2, because right in the intro of this song, you have like this eerie squeaky gate sound, and it's got like a
Yeah.
little bit of synth going on in it, and then it slips into like a real soulful pattern, and
Mm-hmm.
I think it just works really well. It's not a favorite. It's not, it's not a favorite, but it's just I think it's just a really well done song. But it's not one that I'd put on like, all the time. Once again, it's kind of like if it was playing in the background, I'd kind of groove to it, but it's not something that,
Yeah.
that it's not a forerunner.
Yeah. This was my favorite on the album, I think.
Yeah.
Just because I really like that sound they have at the beginning, that, like you were saying, like a squeaky gate, but, like, yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
really like that timbre, and then just, like, the texture for the rest of the song as it, like, moves into a different section. I think it works really well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very good. All right. Number 8, hurricanes. So I'm just now thinking like I like to have soundtracks like based on, if I'm going on a trip or like whatever. I think I'm gonna have to add these to like my hurricane soundtrack next time we have a hurricane coming. Or maybe the aftermath of a hurricane. But
I
anyway,
don't,
so this song
I don't know if you want to add all the melancholy, but yeah, I get that. I get that
I need
sentiment.
some mood music, like aftermath of a hurricane. Get some mood music there. But anyways, well, Hurricanes is a slower song again. It's very soulful. I liked it. I liked at the end there was like this crescendo of instruments that I thought sounded good. So yeah, I thought this was a good song.
Yeah. So okay. So I'm not a huge fan of this song. So this is probably one of my least favorites on the album. But
Okay.
Mm.
I think it was done very well. I think that it's a little too melancholy for me. But toward the end, they did this kind of layered vocals thing that I thought was really interesting, and they had that big crescendo at the end that I thought was really, really well done. Because it kind of gives you that, to me, it gives you that calm before the storm feel. It feels like there's a
Mm-hmm.
build up, and then something's about to explode. And
Yeah,
I thought that was really really well done, but just the working up to that point was a little too slowful.
I
It just
gotcha.
felt like, once again, it was very non-offensive, but it was just, it just
Not
wasn't
offensive.
particularly my taste. The tempo was just a little laggy. I could have fell asleep through, the first half of the song. Yeah.
Yeah. I like this song. It starts off and you think this is gonna be like an acoustic ballad, and then, like you were saying, the build up, and I like the structure of that build up. I think, especially once the instruments like fully kick in, like there's some other instruments in the background. It's not full acoustic, but I really like that structure. And yeah, the vocals were good on this track too. It's a very vocal focused song. It's very like soulful belting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. And the vocals through this whole album are very strong. So yeah, I feel like
Yeah.
you do need songs like this to highlight each aspect, because you do have, you know, other songs in this where vocals aren't the prominent aspect, and they're highlighting something else. So I feel like it works well within the album for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, moving on. Number 9, Dissipating Part 3. This is another little musical interlude with that southern sounding voiceover. It's about 35 seconds long, so it's another one of these little skits within the album.
Yeah, it continues kind of the same theme, and I think it works pretty well.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's all I got to say about that. All
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, yeah.
makes me want some cornbread.
Number 10. Okay, Live Without You. This one's, it's got a good beat again. It's another kind of sadder song, but like he's saying can't live without you, but he does say like fake love is better than none. So it's kind of like a little, I don't know about the mood of the song. It's kind of sad, but it's got a good beat though.
Yeah, I agree. This is one of my songs that I was familiar with before, and I've always liked the song a lot. I think it has a really strong horn section in it. Just once again more of that like kind of staccato type horn section, and it's got a really good bass focus groove to it. I just think I think the song's just done really well in it. all the pieces of the band come together really nicely in it. And even though it does have that kind of sadder topic, it's more of like it still is more upbeat of a song.
Yeah.
So I think it's kind of an interesting, meshing of the two. So
Yeah.
I really like
Agree.
this song a lot.
I didn't really like this one. I feel like the ones that are the most old school sounding are the ones I like the
Yeah.
least. Like,
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't
and
know.
and I think that's the ones I like the most because you kind of get different. I don't know, you get different aspects of the instrumentation. Um,
Yeah.
and it's not as common like now. You don't really hear a lot of it. And so when you hear these, younger artists or emerging artists kind of going back to that realm, it's just an interesting, like what were they listening to that
Yeah.
made them want to focus on this style? It's just interesting to me.
Yeah, I
I
just
agree.
Yeah, because growing up, it's kind of like you're influenced by so many things, and like the choice of music you decide to play or listen to is usually like a snippet of your time. So, like people always gravitate back toward when they were high school or whatever, the songs that they remember the
yeah.
most. So it's like, why did these musicians choose to go back even further? Because they're young and, they're playing these
It was like
these
their really like
patterns.
their parents. Like a lot of people too. You hear a lot of
Yeah,
musicians say like my parents used to play such and that really inspired their music. So
yeah,
maybe it's that kind of thing. Or I mean, I like when people have like a really broad base of
yeah.
musical inspiration. So it is interesting to me.
Yeah, it's super fascinating. So that's why I think I tend to like these style songs a little bit more. Yeah.
This is making assumptions, but I wonder if the act of playing has something to do with that, because it could be yeah, you have a really fun time playing within a certain style, even if it
Yes.
wasn't something you really listened to growing up.
Oh
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Like fun stuff to play. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I just have sort of an aversion to a lot of
Yeah.
old school sounds.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's too old school for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I got you. Okay. Well, we'll move on. Number 11, Concave. So this one has like a biblical theme at the beginning. It's got like a nice softer tune. Pretty horns. Again, I think the horn section is really their talent. And it gets a little frenetic at the end. So I have to say I didn't really like the ending. But the rest of it was fine for me.
Yeah, I kind of shadow that those remarks with kind of what I wrote in my notes, and it's I have a slower song, and I think it has really great horn support. But it's just overall a pretty chill, soulful vibe. I mean, it's
Mm-hmm.
just a quality song, but it's once again, I tend to gravitate more toward the more upbeat songs, and this
Mm-hmm.
one's not quite, doesn't capture that for me. But it's still a
Yeah.
Yeah.
really good, well done song.
Okay, so to me, this song sounded a bit like a 90s rock song.
Yeah, it had a different feel to it.
Yeah,
Just the guitar sound and the chord choices over that. I was getting very Oasis or early Radiohead vibes from
Ah, I like
this.
that.
yeah,
I didn't think of that when I was listening to it, but
yeah.
now that you say it,
Neither did I.
yes, I can hear it.
Yeah,
Yeah, this isn't my favorite. Like you were saying, it's slow, and yeah, slow in a way I didn't like, but I did like the strings in the chorus, like the string
Mm-hmm.
melody there.
yeah. And I think that's like a common theme, for all of us. It sounds like is that even though the song may not be one of our favorites or throughout the album, it seems like there's some admiration toward a lot of the musical parts in the song, whether or not it was a good or a bad song. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty interesting because when I listen to some songs on albums or from various artists, a lot of times it's like I can't find a good quality about the song. So it's usually if
Yeah.
I don't like it, I just don't like it. But these, even though they weren't my favorite, they weren't, you know, there were still positive attributes to each one, So
Yeah, well, I think their talent, like this band, obviously there's a lot of talent
yeah,
Yeah,
with
yeah.
their, they're playing. It sounds really good. It's well put together. Like the production on it, I think is really good. But like you said, even though we don't like the song, we could still appreciate, the talent behind it, I think.
yeah.
Yep.
All right, anything else on this song?
Nope.
Nope.
Next.
All right. Number 12, Cave Flora Part 1. So this is like a voiceover conversation with an 83-year-old. And it sounds like, the person talking to him just wants everybody to be happy. So this was a strange kind of inclusion in the album, I think. Like, it's interesting, but I was kind of like, okay, where are we going with this?
Yeah, I kind of felt the same way on that. I thought this was probably the only one that was a little like misplaced, if I had to say so. Um, like musically, I felt like it worked well because it had that ominous feel, like the rest of it. But I felt like it was a little misplaced because, well, first the length of the skit was a little, substantially longer than the others, but also because it seemed like it was like like somebody. Like I'm happy for them making these choices, but they weren't really happy. Like it's kind of like, well, if that's what they want to
Yeah.
do.
Yeah, it kind of had that
Yeah,
feel.
it had like
Yeah, I
it
agree.
had kind of a bit more of a personal sentiment to me that like just didn't seem to go with the
Like,
rest of
why
the.
was it included
Yeah, it seemed a
exactly? What was
little
the meaning
misplaced.
behind it?
Yeah, yeah,
I disagree. I think like doing the like longest of these instrumental tracks as your penultimate song, I think that's like works for the build up like towards that
Okay,
last
yeah,
song.
I
I
see
think it
that.
works as like a closing statement on an album.
I can see
yeah.
that. I just didn't understand like what the meaning was. Like, why was this meaningful and why was it included?
Right, and I think that's where I was going, but I could totally understand your point for that. So,
Yeah.
what did you feel about the subject matter, like the dialogue itself? Like, did you have any thoughts toward that, or is that just
I
kind of
mean, not one way or the other. It seems like an old man like reflecting on his life and kind of rambling about it.
okay?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I did look up who the speaker was in these, and it's the lead singer, I believe's dad,
okay,
Okay. I knew it had to be a family member of some
yeah,
or
sort,
maybe grandfather. I don't. Some
Yeah.
family member.
yeah,
Yeah.
because and that makes sense because it seemed like he was expressing like I said once again, like he wasn't very approving of this person's choices, but if that's what makes him happy, then let him do what he does,
Yeah.
and so that makes more sense, and I think that's probably why it feels like a more personal skit than the other ones do for sure.
Yeah. Well, if it had meaning to them, then that's all that matters,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, definitely, definitely.
Okay.
All
Well,
right.
we'll move
Well,
on. Number
yes.
13, Bruised Fruit. This is a slower, a sadder song. It has, really pretty instrumentation, I think, but this song was not really my style. Not my favorite.
Yeah, so I do agree with that. It was a little too slow for me, but I thought the vocals were very, very powerful, which
Yeah.
Hmm.
I thought that was a really a highlight of the song, and I thought it had this one more so than the others. I think had better support from the keys, which I thought was really cool too, because once again you have that musical shift, and you have a different aspect of instrumentation going on there. So I think it's a really good song, but it was just a little slow. It's just kind of a little too slow for me.
Okay. I like this song. I think it made a good closer. Yeah, like you said, it's very piano driven, which is
Hmm.
like a new sound for this album, and I think that works as like a closing song. I really like the dynamics on the piano too. That's I think both a playing and a mixing thing, but there are like moments here where the piano like hits really loud,
Yeah.
and I think that's cool. So, yeah, good song.
Yeah, I thought, like I said, I thought it was like a pretty, like the instrumentation was really, I just wrote pretty.
Yeah.
And I love the piano sound. I do. like even though the song like wasn't my style, I thought, once again, the talent there, I mean, is undeniable. I think they did a really good job like putting it together. Just the sadness of the song was a little bit, that's what wasn't my style, but the
Right.
instruments I think were, really well done.
Yeah, I agree. And Bryce, you said something about his new instrumentation on the album, and it almost when you mentioned it, I just thought of something in my head. It's almost like change is coming, or like we're gonna adapt. Is kind of what popped in my head with this
Hmm.
new
Yeah.
instrumentation. So it's kind of interesting. I think it does make a really good kind of closing song. But it's funny sometimes you don't have that idea until you listen to somebody else's viewpoint on it. So, but yeah, I think I think, like I said, although it was slow, I thought had some really great, attributes to it.
Yeah, yeah. So, is that everything?
Yeah, there was one more on their Apollo radio edit, but honestly, it was basically, the same as the
Yeah, it's the
Apollo
radio
we
Yeah,
listened to
edit.
already. Yeah, it's just a radio edit. Yeah.
yeah,
I was like, what? Didn't I already hear the song? Yes, I did actually hear the song. So, that was it. So that was really the end of the album.
Yeah, closing thoughts?
Yeah, closing thoughts. I thought, overall, I am glad that you picked this one, Travis, because it is a totally different sound than I normally listen to, which I always enjoy getting like a different, perspective of music. The instruments I feel like really shine through. The lead singer's vocals I think are really strong. For what genre this is, the more like soulful sound, I think it's really well done. Even though I won't probably listen to this regularly or anything, I think it's still a good album. I mean, like I said, the talent is definitely there, and I think I think growing up like listening to brass bands. And it's such a common thing just to even walk down the street sometimes in New Orleans and hear. Um, it had that familiar sound to me that I always enjoy hearing. And so overall, I thought it was a good album. Some of them really aren't, my thing. It's definitely like some throwback sounds. I thought was an interesting listen altogether.
yeah. So I agree with that as well. Like leading up into choosing this album, there was four different artists that I was thinking about going with, and I listened to plenty of albums, trying to figure out which one I wanted to kind of go with, and that was kind of what my goal was, is to like maybe introduce y'all to an artist that y'all didn't know of, or a sound that you wouldn't particularly listen to. And what I've been finding is like the more I've been playing music personally and trying to learn music, like certain types of styles or different patterns, I've been gravitating away from what I like traditionally and kind of finding these like, genres that aren't so mainstream, that are a little bit more musician focused, bands or pieces. And this particular band, like I said, I've listened to quite a few songs from them, off of various albums, and I just really like their style. And not having heard this whole album, they had a few songs on here that were my favorites of what I've heard from them. So that's why I was like, well, I tell you, it's something that I think I want to use this as a way to listen to this whole album. And I find that this album has been really congruent in its sound. Like everything has meshed well together, from top to bottom. And even though there were a couple songs that weren't my favorite, there wasn't one that I disliked. I thought the whole album was really solid top to bottom, even though I probably wouldn't play a couple of the slower songs as frequently. Um, None of them were offensive. They were all, really well done pieces. And I feel like just they did a great job with the album from top to bottom in its sound and its, quality of instrumentation and what they're giving you for what they were going for. So I thought it was an excellent album. It didn't quite hit the tone that I thought it would, which probably
Mm-hmm.
that's only my fault for expecting a certain tone just based off of one or two songs I heard from it. So, but I thought the musicians did a incredible job constructing it, and I thought it was really really solid album, and I'm glad y'all took the time to listen to it because I know it's probably a little different than what you would normally gravitate toward too.
Yeah, yeah. For me, this was definitely a different genre than I'm used to listening to, but yeah, I'm glad I listened to it. Not all these songs I liked or were my favorite, but it's a good album, and there were some I definitely liked. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
There you go.
All right. Well, is that everything?
I believe so. I'll take us out. Anything else to add, Travis?
No, thank y'all for having me. As always, it was a pleasure.
Thanks for being our guest today, and thank
Yep.
you all for listening. This has been Beach View. Join us next time. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.